Bueno, buenas tardes, noches. Para mí es un placer, en nombre de la carrera de Ingeniería Informática, darles la bienvenida de parte de mi cátedra de Ingeniería de Software, tanto también de la empresa Strategio que nos acompaña hoy, Lynn, que es la que nos va a dar el webinar. Y bueno, a continuación, después de agradecerles a ustedes que hay bastantes estudiantes conectados hoy, le paso la palabra a Lynn y recuerden que vamos a dejar las consultas al final, levantando la manita o bien poniendo en el chat la consulta. Bueno, listo, le paso la palabra a Lynn. Lynn, go ahead. Thank you.
Gracias, Ariana. Deja compartir mi pantalla. And again, we are going to host this webinar in English. Ay, déjame. Okay. Disculpe, yo también, I'm not used to Teams. We use Google at Strategio. Aquí está. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you all for attending this webinar. We are very happy to have you. This is going to be our agenda for this webinar. First, we're going to have some introductions on who the presenters are. I myself, Lynn, am one of them, and I will be joined by Audrey, and we'll also see if my colleague Angela will join later on. After we have our introductions, we will then talk to you all about what Python is, why you might choose Python, and why companies choose Python. Following that, we'll have a brief comparison between Python and other languages, focusing on Java versus Python. And finally, my colleague Audrey will give a code demonstration, and then after that, we'll wrap up with Anke maybe giving some more information about Strategio, and then questions and answer session. Okay. So with that in mind, as I mentioned, as Ariana mentioned, and as I've mentioned, my name is Lynn. My official title at Strategio is Enterprise Simulator Lead, which is our way of saying I am part of the training team. So I train people who come through our training program in various topics. My primary experience is in software engineering, particularly with a Java backend for web applications and then front end using TypeScript or JavaScript. I've been training for about 4 years now, and that is primarily what I have been doing. We are also joined by my colleague Audrey. Audrey, I'm not sure if you want to give a little introduction about yourself.
Hello.
About me? I'm sorry. Is Audrey here already?
Yes. Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey. I am also an enterprise simulator lead. I, like Lynn, have a background with Java, front end with TypeScript and with Angular, but we are expanding more focus on DevOps and DevSecOps these days, which is why we're discussing Python. So I'm excited to be here today and to do a coding demo with y'all.
All right. Thank you, Audrey. And let's go ahead and continue. Or I did see a hand raised. Yes, we are saving questions for the end. So if y'all could make sure that you remember your questions. I think Ariana also said you can put them in the chat. So feel free. And apologies if you see my dog. She has decided to join the webinar as well. All right, but let's talk about Python. So what is Python? Python is a general purpose language, and it is extremely popular. So Audrey mentioned that we are looking at DevOps and DevSecOps, and that is true. However, Python is used for so many other things. It is such a versatile language. It is what we call a high-level language, which means that if you think about what a computer can understand, right, like computer hardware, you can think of that as low level. The closer you get to the actual physical hardware, the harder it is for humans to understand, but the easier it is for computers to understand with zeros and ones. When you think of high level, it's more like what we're used to. For example, when we speak in English or in Spanish, the way we form sentence structure. Python is closer to that than it is to the zeros and ones that computers can understand. So that's what we mean when we say it's a high level language. It's also interpreted. Can you all raise your hands if you have experience with a language such as Java? Who has experience with Java? Even if it's in your university coursework? Okay, see a couple people. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So for those of you, and thank you all for raising your hands, you can feel free to put them back down. But if you have experience with Java, you might know that when you write your code in Java, you have your source code, but then you have to compile it into Java bytecode. Java is what we call a compiled language because you have to translate it into something the computer can understand. And while Python also has to be translated, it doesn't translate it all at once. Instead, with Python, you install on your computer what you call an interpreter. And the interpreter, when you run your program, is going to translate one line at a time, starting from the top of the file all the way to the bottom of the file. So you don't translate it before you run it. It's more of translating it as you go. So you can think of that like when you're watching a show in a different language and you have subtitles, and maybe it's a show that's live on TV and those subtitles are live translating it versus something that has already been translated and it's just grabbing that information that's already been pre-prepared. So that's the difference. Python also has dynamic syntax, which I promise we'll get to. We are going to show an example in the slides, and then Audrey will wrap up with an example, a live demo for you all to see what you can do with Python. All right. Python is also a programming language that supports multiple programming paradigms. Programming paradigms are how we structure our code. And so those of you who've worked with Java, you know you have to put your code into classes. Java is very strict in how you put things. Python, not as much because it does support classes like Java. However, it also supports functional programming. So again, because Python reads files from top to bottom, you're not required to put everything inside a class, inside that box. It'll go from top to bottom. And so that is part of what makes Python so versatile, the fact that it does support multiple ways of structuring your code. And we'll take a look a little bit at that a little later. And fun fact, Python was created by Guido van Rossum in 1991. He really wanted something that was a little bit easier to digest for our eyes as humans and something that was more versatile, something that could be used for multiple different purposes. We do have the link at the bottom of my screen here for the official Python website. So that is python.org if you are interested in downloading it to your machine and trying it out. It is a lot of fun. So I definitely encourage you, if you are curious, to download it. Audrey and I have been working a lot with Python recently, and we get very excited. We absolutely love coding, so it's been a lot of fun to work with it. All right. Now we've talked about what Python is, but why exactly would you choose Python? We talked that Python is a general purpose language. So that's one reason why people choose it. But to go more in depth on that, Python has so many different use cases. In particular, to narrow it down, we have these 8 here on the slide. Python is very commonly used for data analysis and data visualization. So if your dream is to work with data, if your dream is to make beautiful visuals like pie charts and line charts, that's something you can do. And even if that's not your dream, that's okay, because sometimes making these graphics are part of creating solutions for software. And that's something you can do with Python. You may have also seen that artificial intelligence is extremely popular nowadays, and that is something that is definitely a very popular use case for Python. ChatGPT is built on Python, and so there are many code libraries, which is reusable pieces of code built by others that you can then bring into your project so you don't have to start from scratch. But they use a lot of Python for this purpose. It's also used in software development, both for desktop applications and web applications. Audrey mentioned DevOps, so that is used to help automate the development pipeline. So if you all have used a version control system such as Git, where you have to push to, for example, GitHub, which is what we use, then sometimes you want something to happen with your code. For example, you might want tests to automatically run and check to see if your code is good to go when you push to GitHub. That's something that Python might be able to help with. It's also used by a lot of cloud providers to help with automation. So, for example, it's very commonly used in Google Cloud, Amazon Web Services, or Microsoft Azure. So, again, very handy tool, a lot of different use cases that it has. And I've talked about a couple, I've name dropped a few companies. We've mentioned Microsoft, we've mentioned Google, we've mentioned Amazon, and of course, OpenAI. And those are just a few of the many companies that use Python. So here we have a list of more companies. Now, this isn't a list of all the companies. We just wanted to give you a snapshot of some of the large companies that do indeed use Python for various different items. So, for example, Google, they use Python for Google Cloud. They also use it for Google Search and for their YouTube platform. Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, also uses Python for data analytics, for example. Spotify also uses it for data analysis, as does Netflix. I don't know how popular Dropbox is nowadays, but if you haven't heard of it, it is a file storage company. So they have an application that you can install in your desktop that is written in Python, and then you can sync your files on your computer to a cloud-based storage. So that also uses Python. You have financial tech companies such as JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs. You have other big players in technology and in e-commerce, such as Amazon and Shopify. And again, we have OpenAI, who created ChatGPT. So these companies all use Python. And while I won't say that, and while I will say, excuse me, my dog just jumped away. And with Strategio, we can potentially serve as a launching pad, right? So we work with Fortune 500 companies, not necessarily companies on this list, but we can help people kickstart their career in technology. So that is what we aim to do, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to do this webinar with you all, because we want to expose you to Python so you can see what the options are out there and what the possibilities are with this language. Now, speaking of possibilities, when it comes to Python versus other languages, Python, like we said, very versatile. A lot of companies use it. If you take a look at it compared to different languages, there are a lot of different features that it has. So we've talked about programming paradigms. I mentioned object-oriented in particular because that is what Java supports. Python is also functional and procedural, which allows us to have functions. So instead of using classes as the overall containers for our application, we can have functions, which is just, a small piece of reusable code, like a little script that can get executed over and over again, much like a code is to us when we can execute that script over and over again. But think of a function as a smaller version of that. We've talked about how Python is dynamically typed, although I didn't go in depth, so now I will come back around to that. Basically, in Python, you don't have to say, oh, this is going to be a number when you write your code. That is actually detected when you run your script. Whereas in Java, you have to say, yes, this is a number. And specifically, it's a whole number. It's an int, or no, it's actually a decimal number, called a double in Java. So that's some of the differences between the two languages. We've also mentioned how Python is interpreted, whereas Java is compiled. And Python does have a lot of use cases. However, there are some use cases that are more popular than others. For example, machine learning and artificial intelligence are extremely popular right now. Data science is also extremely popular with Python. That is something that I actually took a course for when I was in university, because fun fact, I was a mathematics major. So I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics. So I did some data analysis in Python as part of my coursework. All right. But that's Python versus other languages. You might notice that I am neglecting JavaScript and C++, and that is because this slide is here to be more of a sneak peek. We are going to give you all a sheet with more information after the webinar, a little flyer, and that has a more complete table of information that compares these 4 extremely popular languages so you can see the benefits and the potential drawbacks for them as well. All right, and I know I've been talking a lot. I promise we are almost done with these slides, and then Audrey will show you all a very exciting lesson actually showing how to use Python. But just to wrap up, Java versus Python in terms of how you write your code. This application up here at the top is written in Java, and this short one down here, which is only 4 lines, is written in Python. So already we can start to see some differences visually in how long they are and how much more you have to write to complete the same thing in Java versus Python. So let's talk about it. First, we mentioned how Java is more strictly object-oriented, and it does require anything that we write, to be contained in classes. So I created here a class called greeting, and that contains everything that I need for this application that's going to greet my user with something that says hello and then followed by their name. Python doesn't require that. While Python can support object-oriented programming, you don't have to put things in classes. You can see here, all I'm doing is defining a function, which is what this def keyword is telling us. So def main, and then we have the actual work that our application is doing within this function here. In Java, you do have more overhead because you do need to create a class and then you have your function within it. Java also requires your method be called public static void main. So what does that tell us? That basically tells us that that is our starting point. It's almost like saying, hey, this is where we're actually going to start running our application. This is what the Java virtual machine is going to look for when it's running your program. In Python, because it executes line by line, you don't need that specifically. Instead, what you need is after you create your function, you need to call it underneath it at some point. So here you can see that we have main and then 2 parentheses, and that's us saying, hey, now that we've created that, we want to go ahead and use it in our code. Java also defines code blocks with curly braces. You can see we have a curly brace to start here after we define our function and at the very end. And in Python, we actually rely on this colon here. So this says anything that comes after this is within this code block. And you also use indentation. So when you use Python, it needs to be indented 1 to the right. In Java, you don't need that. While I did indent it so that it's more readable, the reality is if you really wanted to, and I did used to do this admittedly back when I was not as experienced in code, and back in university when I didn't use a fancy development environment that automatically formatted my code, and I used a lot of Notepad on my computer to write code, I would indent things all the way to the left. So it was a little bit hard for me to read as a human, but my computer could read it okay. So Java, you're not bound by the indentation. It doesn't affect how your program runs. But in Python, you do need to be careful about indentation level. All right. And finally, just to wrap up this section comparing these two languages, in Java, you end lines of code with semicolons. In Python, you do no such thing. As a Java developer at heart, I have made that mistake because my pinky just automatically goes for the semicolon button, and my Python code gets very upset with me. So I have gotten out of that habit, thankfully. Okay, and we already talked about this one here. Java is statically or manifestly typed. You have to say, hey, this variable is a string or an int. In Python, that's determined when you actually run your application. So it's just a little recap of what we covered earlier. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Audrey. Audrey, if you could please take away the Python demo.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. Again, my name is Audrey, and we're going to be coding out a few Python files today. The focus for these demos will be on loops, specifically using while loops. Looking at the different things you can do with strings in Pythons and how you can leverage formatting, how you can get input from the users like you saw in Lynn's previous code comparisons. So interacting with the terminal. And then creating functions using the def keyword. And then what conditionals look like in Python. So if this happens, then I want to do this. Or if it's something else, then I want to do this. Or else, at the very minimum, I want to do this. So we're going to be coding out 2 files today, hello.py and guess.py. I have created a repository on GitHub where we will make it available for you for just if you want to look at it later, that you can freely access. Okay, Lynn, I am going to be taking the screen from you. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. It should look like I'm perfect on my IntelliJ IDE. There are several IDEs you can use. It's a coding environment. It really helps with running and making sure your code is checked. I'm using IntelliJ. There are other popular ones. If you're using Java, frequently Eclipse is popular. There's also VS Code, but I will be in Python. Okay, so you see that I'm currently in a test.py. This is already in that repository. I will share the link later. But we're going to create two new files. It's going to be hello.py and guess.py. So first, we're going to do hello.py. I am going to create my files from the terminal so that you can see me create them. If I right-click, you won't be able to see my options pop up, so I'm going to do everything from the terminal. So I'm going to write touch. This will create a new file. Hello, and then .py, Python files end with the suffix .py. And I ran it, and I see it is created here. I am going to minimize this so that we have more space after I open it. So the first thing I want to introduce is a while loop. So as Lynn mentioned, you don't need to create a class, you can just type your code. So I'm going to do while and then true. Then I want to print, and I'm just going to do hello. And this is getting mad. See, indentation, as Lynn pointed out, is very important. It was slightly just spaced off, and immediately it's getting mad at me. So I'm going to take that away, and now everything is compiling, no red lines. And how I run it is you can click this run button, and it just keeps going. The issue with this program is that true will always be true. With a while loop, it will complete the code at least one time, and then it will, that's a do while loop. We'll do it at least one time. But so long as a condition is true, it will complete the code block, but true is always true. So let's make it so that it doesn't just keep going. So I'm going to change it, and we're going to do a number and set it to 0. And we're going to see while the number is less than 2. And so this will print out the number 3 times because it'll print it out for 0, it'll print it out for 1, or I would like for it to print it out 3 times. Let's see what actually happens. So as I showed, you can run it here, or if you run it in the command line, I am going to open my terminal. I'm using Python 3, so it would be Python 3, and then the name of the Python file you want to code. Okay, so it's still going indefinitely. What's happening here, do Control C is a frequently used way to exit. 0 is always less than 2. So what I'm going to do is increment our number plus plus, because Java. Actually, plus plus, though it increments by 1 in Java, it does not increment in Python. So what you have to do is plus equals 1. So what this is saying is I want the number plus 1, so 0 plus 1, and then set it to that number. So 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, and then it will stop. Okay, so let's take a look at that again. I'm just going to use my up arrow and it fills it in. And I do see it prints it out twice. That's because I did number less than 2. If I did less than or equal to 2, then it should output it 3 times. And if I wanted to see that number printed, what I can do is format. How you format in Python is you add this F to the string, and I want to add it before. So I have number 0. In curly braces, I'm going to add number. And I'm going to add a space just for aesthetics. And I press my up arrow and enter, and I see 0, 1, and 2. You can even do addition within this. So most humans don't count 0, 1, 2 whenever they are going through counting to 3 items. It is popular in computer programming to count in this manner because whenever you store things in things such as arrays, they are 0 indexed. So the first item is actually at 0, not 1. But I'm a human, so I want to see it as a human would count. So I'm going to take my number, which starts at 0, and add 1, so what will display is not 0, but 1, 2, and 3. And there it is, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, now I've decided, I don't want to just decide how much I want to say hello. I'm going to ask the user to request or give me an input on how many times they would like to hear me say hello. So I'm going to come outside of the while loop and create a variable called requested hellos. And this will be captured from the user with input. This is a built-in function with Python, so I didn't have to create it. And by default, input takes in strings. So a string is this type of format as opposed to a number which doesn't have quotation marks, but I want to make sure it's a number. But we'll see what it looks like when I don't do this first. And in input, you can actually provide a prompt. So I'm going to ask the user, how many hellos would you like? Okay. So let's just, in Python, you can do Control or Command \, and it will do these hashtags, which will actually comment out previous code in case you don't want to run it. Because I just want to focus on making sure I can view this input. So we're going to take in requested hellos and then print them out. So again, let's run it. How many hellos would you like? 3. And it took in 3. I'm going to add a space so that there's a space between this question mark and 3, just for future note. And now let's try that again. So I'm going to not just delete my code. I'm moving it down. And instead of less than 2, I want to make sure that I give them the requested number of hellos. There's a warning sign. I'm not really sure what that means, but I'm going to try it anyway. And I want 3 hellos. And I get this error. It's called a type error, and it says less than or equal to not supported between an instance of an int and a str. So by default, whenever you get an input, it brings it in as a str, which is a string or a sentence, but I want to make it an integer. So that's what I was doing previously. I'm just going to wrap it with this function that's built in with Python. And now I see that yellow is no longer there. So I'm going to run it again. How many would I like? 3. And I am actually getting 4. Because I am starting at 0 or y. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it is taking in 2. And when I requested 2, it's actually giving me 3. Just kidding. I'm reading it wrong. It's because it's incrementing it. No. Why would it be doing that?
It looks like in the chat, Audrey, we have Luis saying to either start it at 1 or remove the equal sign. I believe he is speaking about line 10.
Line 10. Yes. Okay, so line 10 or line 8?
It should be on 8.
Okay, so 3. And now we do have 3. If I go back and do 2, now we have 2. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So now, instead of just going down and using throwaway code, pretty much, let's wrap things inside of functions. So it is best practice to have a main function. So I'm going to call def main. And this is where I will write some code. I'm going to take in the user input. And then I'm going to have another one called def say hello. And this will take in the number of times that I want to say hello. It does not like poor indentation. It is super important in Python. So I'm going to make sure that everything is as expected. I'm going to take the number of times and then requested hellos, make sure that I say hello, the requested number of hellos. So now if we run it, nothing happens. Nothing's happening because though we have created functions, we haven't actually called the main function. I'm going to call main at the very end of the file. If I call it at the beginning, it's not actually defined yet. So it won't actually work as expected. How many times do I like hello? 3, and I do receive hello 3 times. Okay, and then finally we want to add in our conditionals. So what if someone asks for hello 30 times or 100 times, or they don't ask for hello at all and they put 0? well, then I am going to want to control for those conditions. So I'm going to start with number equals 0, and I want at least 1. I just want to say something. So if they don't put 0 or they put something like a negative, I want to make sure I capture it. So if times is less than or equal to 0, colon, then I want to print howdy. An alternative to hello, they didn't ask for hello, so I'm just going to say howdy. And then else if, so if it doesn't fit that condition, but I want to check another condition, then I'm going to say times greater than 5. So you know what, I actually don't want to say hello 30 times. It feels a bit excessive. So I'm going to cap it at 5. So if they ask for 6, then I'm only going to say it 5 times. I'm going to print hello. And it's cool in Python, what you can do is you can actually do multiply by the number of times, and it will print that print statement that number of times. And I'm going to actually put a new line, because if I don't, then it's just going to be hello, 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 all crammed in next to each other. And then finally, if it doesn't meet either of those conditions, then I'm going to create a final else. And this will be while the number is less than the amount of times. Then I want to print hello, similar to what we had earlier. And then I have to make sure I increment it, otherwise it will just continuously print. So now if I run it again, how many hellos would I like? 0, I get howdy. 2, I get 2. 30, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, more than that because I am multiplying it by times, and I said I wanted to cap it at 5, so let's put 5 in there. 100, and it is not 100, it is definitely 5. Okay, so let's bring it all together. I am going to touch guess.py. This will create a new file, guess.py. And in here, we are going to create a guessing game. So I do have some pre-written pseudocode to help us organize how we're going to create this game. So one of the powerful benefits of Python is that there is just a vast variety of libraries or pre-written code from others that you can import into your code. Python does come with random, so you don't need to import it elsewhere, but there are a lot of different libraries that people put out there that are leveraged for data modeling, for statistics, for language learning, for your language models, for AI. So that is a huge benefit of Python. And then I'm going to wrap everything in a main class. So I'm going to call def main. And we are going to call it guess the number. Is going to be the name of our game. And so we need to define it, def guess the number. So the first thing that I am going to need is to have a random number to guess. That is where this random import is really going to help me, because I don't want to create the code right now that would give me a number at random. So I'm going to leverage that. So number to guess is going to be set equal to random, that random int, and then it's going to be a number from 1 to 100. And I also want to cap it. I only want to allow 3 attempts. So in order to do that, I need to keep track of how many attempts we've done, just like we caught track of how many numbers we had for hello. So attempt equals 0. And then I want to make sure that I can introduce the game so that the user knows what's happening. So I'm going to create 2 print statements. And it's going to be welcome to guess the number. It is possible for you to have 2 types of, oh goodness, quotation marks. If you see, I do not just have the outside quotation marks, but I do have the inner ones. You just have to make sure that they're 2 different types, whether it's double or single, so that Python knows I want to actually print this as a literal instead of saying it's another string. And then I'm also going to let them know how they're going to play, that I am thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Okay, so we have a way of producing a number to guess. We have a way of tracking how many attempts they have completed. And we are going to be creating a while loop. So we're going to track whether or not we're playing the game. So playing game equals true. And in Python, it's not undercase true, it is uppercase. And now we want to get a guess. So while playing the game, I want to take in a guess from the user. So we did that with input. So guess is going to be an int. We've done this before. Input. And we're going to do enter your guess. This space. So we now have their guess, but we want to exit once they reach 3 guesses. So that will be 2. So if attempt is equal to 2, then I am going to let them know that they ran out of guesses and let them know what the number is. So print, and I'm just going to copy and paste that. So you ran out of guesses and the number is the number to guess. And then you can break out of this loop. This will make it so the loop no longer continues. Or you do playing game equals false, so that it will no longer be true and so that you will not continue to go through the loop. Okay. So then I want to see if they have a number less than the number that we are given. So is their guess less than the number to guess? I want to give them a hint that it's a little too low. So I'm going to print too low, try again. I also want to let them know how many guesses they have left. So I'll do F. You have, and I'm going to do 2 minus attempts. Left. So they know that they have either 2, if it's 2 minus 0, 1, or no attempts left. But if they have no attempts, then we will see the correct answer. And then if it is too high, so let's make sure these comments are in the right areas. So L if, and then guess is greater than the number to guess. Then leveraging what I just did. The number is too high. Try again. Or the very last possible solution is they got it. So it isn't too low, it isn't too high, it's just right. So we're going to say a formatted string. Goodness, my cursor. Congratulations. You guessed the number. And then let's tell them in how many attempts. So in attempt, and then finally, we are also going to have the playing game set equal to false, just in case they got it in the first attempt or the second attempt. And then all the while, we do need to make sure that our attempt is incremented and we don't see it continuously going. Okay, and so that is it. Finally, I do need to make sure I do call my main method, main at the bottom, so that the game runs. Okay, so if all goes well, then we'll do Python guess.py. Thinking of a number, 22. Too low, okay, 50. Too high, okay, 30. And this is not going. So instead of doing this, I am going to just have the break. Let's try that one more time. 22, too low. 40, too high. 26, and the number was 28. Awesome. And that is it.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Before I give the word to Angela, me gustaría pedirle a todos los estudiantes un gran aplauso para Lynn y para Audrey por esa excelente presentación. This was very, very excellent presentation, and I asking for a great applause. So, antes de pasar a las preguntas, before we go to the question, because I already have one from Jason that I'm sure, estoy segura que Ángela se la va a poder contestar antes de que termine Ángela, ya no va a tener esa pregunta Jason. Entonces le vamos a dar el pase a Ángela. Adelante, Ángela, bienvenida. Muchas gracias. Si te presentas primero y luego te dejo con los chicos. Muchas gracias.
Claro que sí, muchas gracias Ariana, Audrey y Lynn. Bueno, les cuento un poco sobre mí. Mi nombre es Ángela, soy de Bogotá, Colombia. Trabajo para Stratillo. Hoy les quería contar un poco más acerca de qué hacemos en Stratillo para que conozcan qué hay detrás de todo lo que están viendo hoy. Voy a cambiar un segundo a inglés. Audrey or Lynn, could you please help me with the presentation so I can share that with them? Thank you. Entonces la idea es contarles un poco sobre Stratillo de una forma, digamos, un poco más rápida y simple. Entonces, ¿qué hacemos en Stratillo y por qué queremos generar este valor agregado? Pues directamente con la institución. Bueno, Stratillo básicamente es una empresa que se dedica a generar o a crear talento para las 500 compañías más grandes de Norteamérica. Nuestra misión de incrementar la diversidad, la equidad y la inclusión en la industria IT pues nos impulsa también a crear nuevas oportunidades laborales para ese talento que está a punto de graduarse de sus carreras profesionales en STEM. Y esto lo hacemos a partir de un entrenamiento intensivo de 8 semanas, en donde la persona va a ser entrenada tanto a nivel de habilidades blandas como habilidades técnicas, para que la idea es que después de estas 8 semanas este grupo de personas pueda como tal ejercer el rol que el cliente necesita. Entonces les voy a dar un ejemplo. En este momento en Costa Rica tenemos un cliente bastante grande que contrató project managers, tenemos otra persona que está trabajando como software developer, entonces tenemos distintas oportunidades y la idea es que podamos como hacer un entrenamiento complementario a esas muy buenas bases que ustedes ya tienen con la universidad para que puedan ejercer como tal el rol y que no sientan que hay una barrera como tal de experiencia, que es algo que vemos constantemente en la industria. Entonces, ¿cómo saben si Stratillo es el programa para ustedes y si les impulsa como tal a aplicar a nuestras vacantes o a nuestros talent pool en este momento? Es, lo primero es que la idea es que tengan un nivel de inglés mínimo de B2 y que se puedan comunicar de manera fluida. La segunda es que estén súper motivados por la oportunidad de aprender y trabajar con expertos como tal de la industria, como lo ven con Linet y como lo ven con Audrey. En este caso también tenemos a Antonio, que es nuestro Head of Tech. Y por otro lado, también la idea es que puedan estar disponibles full time, ya que esto es un entrenamiento intensivo. Entonces, lo ideal es que estén a punto ya de graduarse o que, por ejemplo, ya hayan finalizado como tal sus materias en la universidad. ¿Qué les podemos ofrecer? Primero que todo, trabajar con empresas globales o multinacionales y comenzar a incrementar o como tal, como crecer en términos laborales. Lo segundo es que tenemos salarios competitivos directamente en dólares desde su primera experiencia laboral, que si les digo, me hubiera encantado tener eso en la universidad cuando comencé mi carrera profesional. La tercera, van a trabajar con muchísimas culturas y sobre todo con un talento completamente diverso, que eso para nosotros es lo que más lo nutre a uno como profesional, porque es lo que te ayuda a identificar diferentes puntos de vista y demás. Y al final también es comenzar a definir esa experiencia laboral con una multinacional que no solamente te da la oportunidad de trabajar en este momento con ellos, sino eso es lo que va a dictar tu futuro de ahí en adelante a nivel de experiencia laboral. Entonces, si les interesa mucho la oportunidad y quieren hacer parte del talent pool, los invitamos a que al final de este webinar o inclusive mañana en la mañana, yo le voy a enviar a Ariana como tal una pieza gráfica en donde van a tener un QR para que puedan aplicar y adicional en esa pieza gráfica van a encontrar como el resumen de todo lo que vieron hoy con Audrey y con Linet. Entonces, eso es todo lo que tengo que decir. Estoy súper abierta a preguntas y a las preguntas también relacionadas con el webinar. Y ya.
Muchas gracias, Ángela, Audrey, Lynn, muchas gracias. Mañana yo les estaré pasando al correo de ustedes la información que me van a dar y entonces abrimos la opción de preguntas. Bueno,
Perfecto.
Jason es el que preguntó primero que dónde puede aprender Python. Bueno, ya lo saben, con la empresa de estas tres chicas tan maravillosas, con Ángela, Audrey y Lynn, ellos dan un entrenamiento de 8 semanas si quisieran ustedes aplicar. Pero bueno, le dejo también a Ángela que responda dónde puede aprender Python de manera profesional.
Claro que sí. Bueno, como Ariana dice, por nuestro lado, el entrenamiento complementario, porque sabemos que tienen las bases más funcionales y necesarias como tal para todo el tema de desarrollo, como tal para la industria, pero en Stratillo sí conseguimos dar ese entrenamiento, sobre todo según las necesidades del cliente. Y creo que voy a inclusive a incluir a Audrey o a Lynn en la pregunta porque pues ellas son las expertas, ¿no? So Audrey and Lynn, I know that you kind of understand Spanish, but they're asking how or where they can learn Python in a very professional level.
Luis Diego también pregunta, Luis Diego Aguilar, que si tienen posiciones abiertas para Mid Senior.
No ahora, pero no te diría que no dejes de aplicar porque eso va cambiando constantemente. Entonces, si estás en el talent pool y vemos que tu perfil hace match con lo que estamos buscando, te vamos a llamar automáticamente. O sea, el perfil nuestro CRM nos va a mandar tu perfil. Yo creo
Muchas
que,
gracias. Adelante.
Lynn and Audrey, could you please answer like that question? Then I can move forward with the next one. Okay?
Okay. Bueno, esa está dirigida a Ángela David Cortés. How can be the recruitment process in Strategia? Is there any technical test? How many rounds of interviews?
Ok. Listo. ¿Les parece
Pensé que ellas la iban a contestar, ¿no? Es por lo que pensé.
No te preocupes. ¿Les parece si contesto esta y luego
Sí.
Audrey en la
¿Cómo suele ser el
contesta
proceso de
Python?
reclutamiento en Strategio? Si hay pruebas técnicas y cuántas rondas de entrevistas. Gracias.
Claro que sí. Entonces, el proceso de reclutamiento en Strategia es básicamente llegan a nuestra base de datos. Nosotros revisamos que el perfil haga match con lo que estamos buscando, no buscamos experiencia, como les decíamos, que por ejemplo el background o como tal, el estudio que hayan hecho esté relacionado con lo que estamos buscando y el nivel de inglés y todos los requisitos que les mostré. Y una vez decimos, ok, esta persona pasa a lo que llamamos el Behavioral Assessment. El Behavioral Assessment es básicamente una evaluación como tal de habilidades culturales que nosotros tenemos que medir porque en Stratillo nos interesa tener una muy buena cultura. Entonces, digamos, pasan esa evaluación. Listo, perfecto. Luego hacen lo que llamamos el assessment técnico como tal, en donde puede variar completamente. Es decir, puede que para un project manager sea algo de selección múltiple o como puede que para un desarrollador sea algo mucho más de un código en vivo. Y si pasan este paso del proceso, la idea es que sigan adelante con la entrevista con mi equipo, que es el equipo de talento, en donde identificamos cultura, identificamos motivación, identificamos diferentes factores. Y si pasan esa entrevista, pasan a la entrevista técnica con nuestro equipo de tecnología, que puede ser por el lado de Audrey, por el lado de Linet, por el lado de Antonio, que es la persona encargada del área. Si todo va bien durante esta entrevista, seguimos adelante con un simulador y ya de ahí en adelante comienza, nosotros llamamos simulador al entrenamiento, ¿listo? ¿Por qué lo llamamos simulador? Porque no solamente van a haber un entrenamiento como, por ejemplo, no sé, quiero aprender inglés. No, van a ver algo supremamente práctico en donde cada semana van a tener proyectos relacionados a el cliente, van a tener proyectos muy de la vida real. Entonces, por eso se llama simular. Entonces, ese es el proceso de reclutamiento que nosotros hacemos. Y no se paniquen, no necesitamos que sean expertos en una tecnología en específico, simplemente que muestren que las bases que tienen en términos de programación o de lógica sean lo suficientemente fuertes para decir como listo, esta persona puede aprender súper fácil, por ejemplo, Python o las tecnologías que sean requeridas. Listo. I think Audrey and Lynn, now you can answer the question about how they can learn Python in a professional environment or level.
Yes, we did put the links to the resources that we recommend in the chat. So Audrey recommended this course called CS50. It's released by Harvard. And I linked to the beginner's guide that's on the official Python website. Those are both fantastic resources to start getting familiar with Python.
Okay.
Perfect.
Gracias. Seguimos con Kenia. Kenia dice, ¿solo dan el entrenamiento antes de entrar a trabajar o dan algún taller o cursos?
Solamente es luego que ya te gradúas o que estás próxima a graduarte, porque la idea es que nosotros podamos ser ese puente entre, por ejemplo, ya tu conocimiento y esa primera experiencia laboral. Entonces, es algo que hace parte de nuestro negocio, que es ofrecerle al cliente como tenemos este talento que tiene muchísimo potencial, lo queremos entrenar para que pasen a trabajar con ustedes. Entonces no es como cursos o talleres, sino es un entrenamiento para ejercer el rol que se necesita.
Gracias. David Salazar, yo hice esa pregunta también. ¿Este entrenamiento tiene costo o es solo para personas que ya fueron contratadas? Yo pregunté lo mismo,
Me
que si tenía un
encanta.
costo.
Sí.
Adelante.
Me encanta esta pregunta y no, chicos, no tiene absolutamente nada de costo en absoluto. ¿Y por qué? Porque nosotros queríamos generar ese valor diferencial a lo que hace, por ejemplo, un bootcamp, que un bootcamp te cobra por estar entrenándote o X o Y. Nosotros no lo hacemos, lo que les decíamos, mientras nosotros veamos compromiso por parte de la persona en quiero trabajar con esta empresa, quiero entrenarme y tener un muy buen performance, eso es todo lo que tienen que hacer. Solamente que tengan ganas, motivación y que estén comprometidos a engancharse pues, con nosotros.
Okay. César la puse en inglés. What makes Python so popular in AI development compared to other programming languages? Adelante, Adri, por favor.
Great question. I was just typing up a response. So I spoke about the random library. That's one that's already built into Python, but there are so many other libraries you can leverage that are really powerful that are made for that language. I was actually first introduced to Python whenever I was pursuing a doctorate, and that's how I did statistical analyses. So there's a lot of statistical different packages or libraries that you can bring in from the outside. Additionally, as you saw with Java, you are really restricted and forced to use object-oriented programming. That's not always ideal or necessary whenever you're working with language models or other statistical analyses. So Python is just more simplistic and better suited for that environment.
Thank you, Adri. Para ir en orden, voy a ir con la pregunta de David, luego con la de Arturo y luego voy con Ariana y sigo para abajo. Ok, David dice, dice, gracias Ángela, ¿solo hay posiciones full time o también hay de medio tiempo?
Hay solo posiciones full time, razón por la cual y razón principal por la cual les decía que necesitábamos que la persona ya estuviera disponible full time. Porque, pues uno, el entrenamiento es intensivo, es decir, de 8 a 6, hora Costa Rica, y posterior a eso, pues también esta persona va a estar, pónganle que así sea empleado directamente de Stratillo, va a estar intercambiando como relacionándose un 90% con el cliente. Entonces sí, tienen que ser full time. ¿Hay límite de edad? No hay límite de edad, obviamente.
Perdón,
Importante
Ángela,
que
seguimos con Arturo.
Ay,
Perdón,
¿dónde?
Ángela, seguimos con Arturo, luego con Ariana y ahí para abajo. Adelante, Arturo.
Listo.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to ask really quickly. From what I understand, Python has many uses, right? I wanted to check if in this training we're going to learn Python for a specific use, or at least what's the client use for Python, or like we're going to learn a little bit about like all the uses, for example, IA or data analysis, for saying,
Great
I
question.
think I can answer this question. Oh, go ahead. It's okay.
Sorry, okay, if you want to take it, go ahead. I think my internet's cutting out, so it might be better for you to take it.
No, it's okay. But basically, it's based on the client's needs. So I'm not the expert, but I know that it totally depends on if the client needs this X type of technology or way of using Python. We're going to literally focus the training on this. So it totally depends. But as you can see, Python has like many ways of using it. So it totally depends on the client. Mm-hmm.
Gracias. Ariana pregunta que dónde se puede aplicar porque dice que se le fue el internet.
Sí, Ariana, no te preocupes. Le estaba comentando a todos que yo le voy a enviar a Ariana mañana un email con una pieza gráfica en donde vas a ver un QR en la esquina superior derecha. Y ahí puedes entrar, luego te lleva a una página web en donde dice cómo aplicar como tecnólogo o technologist. y ahí le das clic, llenan un formulario y automáticamente ya llegan a nuestro talent pool.
Ok, ahora sí, la de Edwin, que si hay límite de edad.
Bueno, Edwin, no en el límite de edad, es decir, lo único es que sean mayores de edad para que puedan seguir adelante pues, con la oportunidad laboral, pero no, en lo absoluto no. Eso es parte de la diversidad, no nos limitamos por eso.
Okay. Jason nos pregunta si algún cliente trabaja con OpenCV para proyectos en robótica.
Well, I think this is a question also for Audrey and Lynn, pero definitivamente considero que eso depende mucho del cliente. No podemos decirte si hay un cliente como que, listo, tiene este checkbox como que te diga como X cliente, normalmente pide este tipo de roles. No. Y ya. O sea, depende mucho del cliente, de la necesidad del cliente todo el tiempo.
Kenia nos dice, thanks for the resources. David Mauricio GTG, eso no sé qué será. Thanks for all the info and resources. Luis Alexander, thank you so much. Very interesting. The winner, I must, aunque ya se va. Y todo el mundo está diciendo que gracias. Entonces me imagino que ya, si no tienen más preguntas, pues OpenCV, what is that? Dice Kenia. Diego Armando levantó la mano. OpenCV? No. No sé. Ok. OpenCV.
Yes, I think Lynn or Audrey, do you know the answer?
That's not something that I've heard of. I believe that was in response to someone else's question. Okay, it's a Python library, it seems. That's what Jason said. That's not one I've worked with or that I'm familiar with, but I believe that you all have potentially looked into it. I just have not had the chance to confirm that on my end.
¿Sí? Seguimos con Diego Armando, que tiene la manita levantada. Adelante, Diego.
Good evening. I was wondering, is there any way we can establish any contact with Strategio in LinkedIn, for example, or in any other way in order to rise our contact list and to have better chances to grow? Is this opportunity exclusive for people close to finish their degree? Because I'm a freshman, as I mentioned before, guys. I'm actually taking CS50, but it makes me excited just to know these kind of opportunities are out there. So thank you very much.
Y antes de que conteste César, Ángela, esa va de la mano con la Yeudi, que dice si se poseen conocimientos sólidos y una buena base, pero aún no se está próximo a la graduación, es posible postularse.
Voy a responderlo en español, sobre todo porque ya hay una pregunta en español. Lo ideal, como les comentaba, es que estén próximos a graduarse, sin embargo, no lo excluye de próximas oportunidades. Como es un pool de candidatos, la idea es que si vemos que en un año tenemos su perfil y decimos como, esta persona nos gusta muchísimo lo que tiene, los llamamos instantáneamente. Es decir, nosotros tenemos un sistema que nos indica también cuándo se van a graduar, en qué momento se van a graduar. Nosotros constantemente estamos como necesitando personas, entonces no es para nada loco que se postulen ahorita. Sin embargo, sí prefiero ser como transparente en ese aspecto, como de es más posible que los contactemos cuando ya estén finalizando o cuando ya hayan acabado materias. Y muchísimas gracias, obviamente, por sentirse tan interesados. Es algo que a nosotros nos encanta. Eso fue la razón también principal de este webinar, que nos conocieran. Entonces, muchas gracias.
Bueno, yo pienso que ahí llegamos porque nada más dice por mi currículum y nada más quisiera como comentarles, ¿no? De que tenemos el diplomado y el bachillerato. Ellos cuando ya el bachillerato lo terminan perdón, el diplomado lo terminan en 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuatrimestres y el perfil es de programador. Entonces yo considero que sí tienen muy buenas bases, digamos, en programación. Bueno, ahí dice, thanks for Python webinar invitation, Esteban. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Y si no hubiese más preguntas, a ver, César, adelante.
I am, bueno, voy en inglés porque supongo que es para las chicas más que todo, pero I'm very interested in pursuing a career in AI It's a field that really interests me. I already know a little bit of Python, but I'm wondering if there are any other programming languages or resources that I can pursue as well to dive into this field that complement Python.
I think this is like more for Audrey and Lynn. So you can like maybe show Cesar where he can go through.
Okay, before Lynn or Audrey, I just want to say that I was the one who asked for this webinar of Python, but not necessarily is what they they give to the people that they recruit. So it's something that I thought it would be interesting for the students to listen to. And it was a really great opportunity to see the coding process and the explanation of Lynn. So it's not necessary that they will train you in Python when you apply to this company. But go ahead. Okay.
It's a great question. There are additional courses specifically geared towards AI. CS50 puts on a number of those. I would look into the additional courses they offer. Additionally, there are different hackathons you can join, even virtually. Lynn and myself joined one for different AI type machine learning language program. But that was all in Python. So joining and completing those type of activities will definitely help. They also frequently use AI in conjunction with bots. So learning Azure and Copilot would be a really great place to start. I think it leverages Python. If you're doing anything with ChatGPT, which they have an open API, then that is actually has Python in the back end, so configuring different things that way. But really just creating mini projects to get yourself more hands-on experience will really set you apart and just engaging with the community.
Thank you, Audrey. So, antes de terminar, a mí me gustaría decirles que le pasen la invitación a otros compañeros y que es muy posible que hagamos algún otro evento más adelante con esta misma compañía, o sea, que tengamos algún otro webinar. So, what I just say is, well, Lynn, understand a little bit more Spanish, is that before I say goodbye, I just want to say that I like them to pass the invitation to other students that they know. And probably we will have another activity like this in the future very soon. So I just want to invite them to stay with us in the next event. So, entonces, muchísimas gracias. Y fue un placer compartir con ustedes. Y muchas gracias a Lynn, a Audrey y a Ángela por esta oportunidad de darnos a conocer la empresa para la que trabajan. Y bueno, pues a ustedes, los estudiantes que también estuvieron aquí un lunes de la noche, también un gran aplauso para ustedes por estar interesados en estos temas y por querer seguir adelante. Entonces, creo que eso sería todo de mi parte. No sé si Ángela quisiera también decir algo de despedida.
No, muchísimas gracias, pues primero a la UNED por darnos el espacio. Estamos más que abiertos a traer ese talento y sobre todo porque sabemos que tienen un gran potencial y es la idea que comencemos a construir esas oportunidades para ustedes. Entonces, cualquier cosa que necesiten, siéntanse libres inclusive de contactarnos cualquier cosa. Me pueden buscar en LinkedIn, aparezco como Ángela María Liévano, con B pequeña. Y nada, nos cuentan cualquier duda que tengan. Mil gracias por el espacio.
Muchas gracias.
Chao.